Hello, sisters. My name is Denise Cordero, and I'm a holistic life coach. You are tuning into Diving Deep with Denise. This is a beautiful sisterhood where we get to have very raw and authentic, unfiltered, uncensored, uncut conversations about all expressions of what it is to be embodied as a woman. We are going to share our pain, our suffering, our triumphs, and our journey to healing. So today I have a very special and amazing friend and guest, Julie Freeman, who has been very special to me, very instrumental in my own personal healing journey. She comes with a great deal of experience, knowledge, wisdom, empathy, compassion. I'd like to give her a formal introduction. So she's a licensed integrative nutritionist with graduate education in psychology, counseling, and education. Her postgraduate concentration has been in functional medicine with completion and certification in this discipline. She has over 40 years experience in the field of nutrition, counseling, and health promotion. Additionally, she is certified in mind-body medicine, yoga, and Reiki. She has authored 2 cookbooks with a focus on balanced meals in Cookbook 1 and healthy, low glycemic desserts and snacks in Book 2. Julie has a passion and knack for creating meals that are eye-appealing, delicious, and healthy. Her 3rd book, Sunflowers, Sapphires, and Seraphim, is her personal story of transformation, an opportunity to share and inspire hope for others faced with life's challenges. Welcome, Julie, and thank you for being here with me.
Oh, it's great to be here, Denise. Thank you.
So in talking about your 3rd book, just your personal story of transformation, I want to get into that right away because this podcast and this community that we're growing and this sisterhood is so much about personal transformations and so much about healing and our journey to healing. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I think the big impetus for me was having gone through a number of years of really deep health challenges. For about 1.5 years, I had not been feeling well, and was finally diagnosed with a rare leukemia. And then following that with Lyme, and then following that with pretty serious staph that put me in the hospital, and was quarantined for 3 months. And what's interesting is that, we're in a quarantine right now, but, I'm kind of used to that whole thing. And then beyond that, I was piggybacked with a daughter who suffered with serious mental health issues and 3 attempts at suicide, and having gone through the traditional psychiatric institutions, which I don't really particularly agree with, but they were needed for emergency services, finally said, that's it, I'm out of here, and went to seek alternative health that I believe in so dearly. So it was a number of these really, really major crises that said, you know what, you got to get this in writing because you're still alive, you're still passionate, and I still love what I do. So, I needed to really kind of get out there and go back and explore my early childhood from actually pre-birth, and then all the way through those years, and start to connect those dots to really kind of understand my own journey, and then also really kind of give that as gift to others to be able to heal for themselves.
Oh, thank you. What did you learn along the way? What were sort of the key, takeaways for you?
Yeah, key takeaways. Number 1 was having felt abandoned. And it's a word that came up many times in my own therapy, was a very strong sense of not having felt held. And again, there's no blame in any of that, but there was a very, very deep feeling of abandonment in my own life that I needed to reconcile, really kind of understand. And I used a number of different modalities, again, traditional psychotherapy, energy medicine, shamanism, astrology, you name it. I came at it from all different directions. And then also another huge one for me was this lack of deserving. And what's interesting is that I have had a challenged relationship with my dad, which has come, pretty much full circle at this point over the years. But as I looked deeply at my own dad's journey throughout life, I recognized his undeserving and how that sort of transferred to me. And so I have so much more compassion for him, as well as even for myself, in terms of like, well, where did that come from? Like, you don't deserve, you don't deserve, you don't deserve. And I still have to do a lot of self-talk around that, but a lot more understanding around that one too.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That resonates so much with me because a lot of the work that I have done for myself has centered around my childhood and my parenting and the parenting that I received and my relationship with my parents. And I have to say, and this has come up over and over again. There was a moment where I grieved this perception, this idea that I had of my parents. It's sort of like I had them on a pedestal and they were like, well, you're my parents and you're supposed to be this. And like they were all knowing, almost like deities. And then as the veil came off, it was like, oh my God, they're so human with their own imperfections, with their own pain, with their own suffering. And it was through this unveiling that I was able to find forgiveness for my mom and for myself. And as you know, I had a very long, difficult, complex relationship with my mother, surrounded around, suffering sexual trauma by my stepdad, and who at the time was her boyfriend. So I think, to add sort of more injury to the pain that I was already suffering from not having that acknowledged, was the fact that my mother later went on to marry that person. And that, that sort of set the stage for the relationship that we would have for a very long time. And it was in this understanding and having this empathy and compassion that forgiveness arose, and we were able to have a different relationship later on in life. And with my dad was different in the sense that my dad and I idolized my dad, and I was always very, very, very close to him. But boy, it took me a while to realize that there was something unhealthy about all the relationship, because he was an alcoholic, and he still is. He's an active alcoholic. And I didn't realize, probably because I didn't have the language, I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the know-how, that it was a very codependent relationship, and that I just enabled my dad. And it was just kind of almost a derelict of duty. Like, I'm his daughter and he loves me and he's cared for me and I need to be there for him. And I made all these excuses, yet I was not honoring myself. I was not honoring my boundaries and what I felt about that, and my own pain and my own experience. While it may have been this, my dad is always there for me thing, but he was a very abusive man to my mother. That was like so difficult for me to reconcile in my mind, that this person that was a great dad to me was not a great person to other people, was not a great person to my mom, was not a great person to his partners. And very, very, very recently, I stumbled upon literature that sort of just like stood out to me in understanding more about my father's challenges and his sort of mental health process. And this is where I learned that my dad suffers from narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh my goodness, it was there all along. Again, I just like didn't have the language, didn't have the tools, the know-how to even know what this is. I just like, oh, my dad is, my dad has a drinking problem type of thing. I never put the pieces of the puzzle together or understood where this like sense of grandiosity came from, and this I know everything, I know it all, and he would just belittle everybody and nobody knew better than him, and everybody, if he went to a doctor, that doctor is my friend, and he is like the top surgeon, he's the top doctor. I'm like, I never could understood or could put into context all those things. But my healing, or my aha moment, was kind of accepting my dad but also respecting my own boundaries. And but it's never ending. Now, my mom, it's been 2 years since her death. I can say that without breaking down and crying about it, because I'm in such a place of peace and feel her presence with me all the time, and feel that like this bond that even in death, I feel this bond that we probably didn't even have in life, but we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there together. But coming back to, how you're still doing your work, I feel like I'm still doing this work, and I still have to work on my own personal narrative of my own self-worth, and, who I am, who I've become, saying to myself, I am enough, I am worthy, and be able to love my parent that's alive now, my dad, and accept him as he is, while still honoring myself and honoring my boundaries. That's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
That is not easy at all. But coming back to you, how did you get into nutrition? Was that something that you were always interested in? Was that like a path that you chose early on, or did you land
No.
there through life experiences?
No. So I was going to be a teacher or a nurse like everybody else in the family. I even had my little aunt's nursing caps and things like that. I was very overweight and very sugar addicted as a young kid.
Yeah.
And well, back in the days, I was born in the 50s, teasing, bullying, and name calling and all that stuff was, acceptable and allowed. And unfortunately, I was one of those kids. So my nickname was Fat Fern. My last name was Fernikes. And I just remember so many days just, coming home from school crying. And my mother would have cookies and milk ready for me,
Oh
just what I
my
needed.
God.
But and then I started my first diet with my parents at age 9. We went to our family doctor, and he put us all on the 1,000-calorie diet. And so that started my my experience with dieting. And I was on a diet, off a diet, binge eating, compulsive eating, whatever. And then just kind of became interested in this whole process, because with what the doctor asked me to do, he said, eat an apple instead of the apple pie. And I would find that no matter what carbohydrate I ate, I wanted more. And that's what actually, spiraled my interest into psychology, is like, this isn't just about the nuts and berries, it's about like the psychology. And then when I was in undergraduate school, we first had psychobiology, which is now, neuroscience and all of that, which I became very interested in. So it's really about looking at some of the biochemistry and the genetics as well as the environment. I mean, it's so fascinating. And then the spirituality and all of that goes later on top of it. So now I started out as an overweight kid.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So how do you, I would just love for you to share with everyone, because I know I've experienced this and it's been so amazing. You're unique in so many ways. Just share, how do you approach a client when they come to you and they're like, Julie, I need to lose weight. I've tried this diet, I've tried that diet, and I just, I can't seem to get it right. I've been yo-yoing, like all my life. I've been up and down, and I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and nothing works.
Yeah. So very common conversation, I must say. So like you, I do a deep dive. I ask people who are going to sign up and be with me to send me over their last, year of labs, tests, office visits, to write a really deep personal history. In fact, I've revamped my initial assessment, which is a number of pages long, to go back into their birth history and all of that. So I really try to coalesce the biochemistry and the psychology and the environment. And then also look at any toxins and things like that might have been, involved in the process. And then have a great conversation and just say, what is it that you would like me to help you with?
That's awesome. Yes, one of the things that I love about working with you and how you've helped me is that your approach is very customized, and that you're not just looking at calories in and calories out, because this is what we learn at a very rudimentary level, right? You're fat
Yes.
because you're consuming too many calories and you're not burning enough calories and that sort of thing. But you look at all these different factors. You look at hormones, and you look at environment, and you look at like what we're currently eating, and you look at blood type and body type and all these different things, which I find is so amazing, because you're drawing from so many different sort of philosophies, theories, practices, to really make it into something that is unique to who we are and our makeup and what's going to work for us, which is great. Because I mean, if we think about nutrition and dieting, it must be a multi-billion-dollar industry, but something must be wrong with it or is broken, because it's like we're all on this hamster wheel trying to get thinner or trying to get fit or whatever it is, and it's not working, because a lot of it is this one size fits all type of approach, and there's just too many things to consider, and you have all these different tools. Can you talk about some of the tools that you use in your practice to help your clients?
Yeah, so the first thing is, because there's a lot of functional testing that I love, but none of it's covered by insurance. So I always start with what labs have been done, and are there gaps in some of those things where we can actually, maybe get the doctor to order other things. I like to use as a perfect example would be thyroid testing, because oftentimes, the first lab that's done is a TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, but it doesn't tell you anything about the active component of the thyroid, which is your T3, your free T3. And if your engine ain't running really well, then your thyroid might not be running well. So I try to take conventional labs, make some sense out of those, and make some adjustments or recommendations. I also look at what someone is eating, and again, their exposure, their hormones, their exposure to plastics. In fact, I'm writing my blog this Friday on environmental exposures, you know, like the wood and the other things that are off-gassing in our homes that may have plastic, you know, residues to them. And plastics cause us to be more estrogen dominant, which causes us to be more insulin resistant, which causes us to develop metabolic syndrome. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So lab testing, I think, is really, really helpful and important. If indicated, I'll look at food sensitivities. I always look at digestion. You know, are you having a bowel movement every day? Because if you're not, then you're recycling your toxins and you may not be losing weight. You know, so those are certainly things. And then I also really look at the emotions, because negative emotions and stress will also impact someone's ability or lack of ability to lose weight. So looking at those cortisol levels, if you're always fighting with your spouse or running around after the kids and angry and feel stressed with work deadlines and not sleeping well, all those things will impact your ability to lose weight or not lose weight. So I bring
That's
breath
so
work in
important.
so often. You know, I just did a YouTube a couple of weeks ago on breathing techniques, you know, and talked a little bit about, you know, how to increase parasympathetic nervous system or relaxation response. So those are just some of the things that I do.
That's important to talk about emotions, because um, there is that a component, I think, that comes into dieting or nutrition, or whether it's weight management, is the emotions, that there's a very strong emotional component to it, and that many of us suffer from some form of emotional eating,
Mm-hmm.
that we stuff ourselves to fill a void or to pacify. It's almost like a medicine to pacify our emotions, to pacify stress or just feeling inadequate. Um, and it plays such a huge role in the psychology of our eating, correct?
It does. And to go a step further, I just was actually talking with a client this morning who has a, you know, disordered eating, compulsive eating pattern, and saying, you know, this is also, you know, especially carbohydrates. We have to, you know, we have to name and label carbs, you know, for better and worse. There are definitely good carbs and we need them, but we oftentimes need less of them. But an overabundance of carbohydrate raises your serotonin level for a short period of time, numbs the brain, you feel great, but then your poor pancreas pumps out insulin, drops the blood sugar level off, and then you're in a compulsive cycle of overeating those carbs. And so I was talking about her language because it was very self-deprecating. And she said, you know, I can have willpower for breakfast and lunch. And I said, wait a minute, let's kind of demystify willpower. It's not about willpower, it's about brain chemistry. And so I think once people can also understand that emotional eating is actually trying to chemically alter what's going on in your brain, it's a lot easier to address it.
Oh my God, that's so important. I'm so glad that you highlighted that and you talked about willpower, because I think that we've been taught, or we've been conditioned that, you know, if that use your willpower and you won't go for that cupcake or you won't go for that bagel, and then when we fail, we punish ourselves for it. And we know that we try so hard, that we really, really want to succeed, and yet time and time and again we find that, you know, yeah, sometimes we win, but most of the time willpower doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It really, oh my goodness. So thank you for that, Julie. I wanted to go back, as you had mentioned about functional medicine and looking at labs, and talk about a little bit about, just if you can teach us the difference between looking at labs from a functional medicine perspective than from a conventional medicine perspective, because we know they're quite different. You're looking at the
Yes,
same numbers, but you're looking at them quite differently.
yes, yes, yes. So the levels of acceptability in functional medicine is narrower. So for example, you know, I like to use vitamin D as an example because most Americans are vitamin D deficient. Many of them have the genetic SNP, it's called the VDR SNP. That means that they don't actually utilize the vitamin D as effectively as they could. It doesn't mean they have an illness. But the, conventional lab will say anywhere between, 30 and 100 is normal. But in a functional lab, we would say between 50 and 80 is normal. And if somebody has a history of cancer, that we want them to be between 60 and 90. So what about those poor people between 30 and 50? They might be still having immune issues, gut issues, mental health issues, bone issues, you name it, because they're subpar or subclinical.
Great. That's
Yeah.
awesome to know that when I look at functional medicine, my layman's understanding of how functional medicine looks at things is what is optimal for the body,
Yes.
rather than this sort of boxed in, straight and narrow definition of everyone kind of falls in this category type of thing.
Absolutely. The other thing that really kind of sets functional medicine apart is that it uses a systems biology approach. And what that means is that all systems of your body are connected. And yet medicine has become so specialized that we go to this doctor for that issue, we go to the next doctor for another issue, and then they don't communicate. So, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, I just finished up with another patient earlier and connected all 4 doctors with myself to say, hey guys, we need to talk together about this patient, and this is what I'm observing. So functional medicine does a nice job of really tying in how the thyroid's connected to the gut and how the gut's connected to the bones and all of that. Yeah.
Is there anything that you've seen in your practice, and it spans so many decades, but that seem to be one or a few common threads that you see just over and over and over in your clients, that you would like to say, look, you're thinking about this wrong, or you're going about it the wrong way. Let me guide you, or let me direct you, or let me re-educate you in a different way?
So, yeah, I think that the 3 or a few basic things are, balanced eating for each person is going to be different. We talk about, there's been a debate about plant-based eating and what that definition means. And I loved the definition that came across in my group a few weeks ago. It was that plant-based just means eating a lot more plants and a lot more colors, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a vegan or a vegetarian. Or conversely, that everybody should be doing a keto. In fact, I'm not a huge keto fan, except for some circumstances. So that idea of balance, I think, is important, but with lots of vegetables included in it. So, and we've been saying that even in the conventional medicine world for a very long time. People need to eat more vegetables that have phytochemicals, that have, antioxidants that help us to fight illness and keep us healthy. The other thing is getting regular physical activity, but that doesn't mean burning yourself into the ground. I was a personal trainer back in the day, and I grew up in the day where, you go for the burn, and that's not the ideal thing to do. We need to have, reasonable physical activity and movement and stretching and all of that. And it should be done pretty much every day, because we're animals. Animals need to move. So that's another thing. And then the other huge one is sleep. I would say that I have a huge issue getting people to get to bed on time. Our brain goes into, the body clock goes into restore and repair between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. And God forbid you go into bed at 1, you're increasing your cortisol levels because of the stress of your body not being able to repair. So reducing blue lights and EMFs and all those kinds of things in your sleeping environment, I think, is really important. So, those are probably the 3 big things that I look at.
Thank you. So you had mentioned something about keto diet or being vegan or vegetarian, and God, I mean, we could go on and on and on talking about different fad diets or different, trending diets that are out there. What can you say to our community about these different diets, whether it's keto or veganism or vegetarianism or paleo or whatever? There's so much information out there. I know, because I've been in the sea of, Google searches or whatever the case may be, and it takes you down one rabbit hole and then another and then another, and you can't even find any really good conclusive information that makes me, at least in my experience, makes me feel more confident or stronger about what's going to work for me. Is there any validity to all these different types of diets that are out there? Where can we find really good, solid information that we can trust?
Yeah, so I think, with anybody that is struggling with a health issue or weight, it's a really good idea to meet with a health professional who is well versed in it, so that you can do the lab work and see, are there predispositions towards certain tendencies where a specific diet might be helpful? Is there a strong family, history of breast cancer, prostate cancer, where more of a vegetarian or, more beans would be better than eating red meat, those kinds of things. So everybody has their own personal, outline in terms of what's going to work better for them. But the general principles are, half your plate full of vegetables, quarter protein, quarter starch for the most part. And I would also say that because many, many Americans, one of our number one areas is this whole idea of metabolic syndrome, higher blood pressure, higher cholesterol, higher blood sugars, and things like that, that I tend to cut back on carbohydrates later in the day, but don't cut them out. I have people eat them earlier in the day. And it's interesting, I did an update. I do continuing education all the time. And there was one on, is intermittent fasting really the best way to go? And what came out of it was that in all these years of research, it comes down to eat when the sun comes up, stop when the sun comes down, eat more earlier in the day and less later in the day. Go, well, I've been teaching that forever. So, it's kind of interesting that some of these principles really seem to hold true with all the scientific rigor. Just a note on keto, keto is definitely beneficial in certain arenas like, epilepsy. I had a patient a few years ago who wanted to get pregnant and she had grand mal epilepsy. And I worked with her neurologist on a keto diet, got her on some methyl Bs after testing her methylation issues, and she had the defect and she did great. And she's now pregnant with her second baby. So, again, there are certain incidences, but for everybody to be doing that, it could actually be doing them a disservice.
Wow. Thank you. That's so great to know, because there's so much information out there and it's conflicting, and you have one person saying keto is great and the other person saying no, there's this is long term is not going to work for you, or it's not for everybody, and it's like, okay, well, if it's not for anybody, is it for me type of
Right.
thing, especially in the culture that we live in, where we want that instant gratification and we want instant results. And especially if our goal is weight loss, certainly there's certain promises that are made with certain diets about the quick weight losses.
Right. And I oftentimes see that doesn't happen. People will go on some of these particular fad diets, and then I end up seeing them and say, well, why didn't that work for me? And then we have to kind of go back to square one and take a look at the basic principles that I mentioned, which is looking at their labs, looking at their environment, looking at their sleep hygiene, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take us back a little bit, sort of looking at just the lifespan or the history of nutrition, because there's been again, just information, movies that have come out which have brought to light sort of the typical American diet, or the recommendations, the American dietetic recommendations that are out there, and what's truth and what's not truth, and what we're being told and what we're not being told, and how some of these things may be politically driven, or interest driven in some way, that are not necessarily in the best interest of the American public. Where do you feel that sort of, where did our nutrition start, and how do you feel that it's evolved, and where may you see it in the near future?
Mm, that's a really good question because we actually had a debate within our own group, the American Dietetic Association. There's a group of us who are the dietitians in functional medicine. Love that group. We're a very active group and support one another. And a few years ago, the ADA endorsed Kraft, Kraft cheese and all of that.
Okay.
And a group of us just wrote to the president and said, you can't be endorsing Kraft being a good source of calcium and protein. And they finally actually pulled it back.
Yeah.
But those of us who spoke out got audited that year. And I lost many, many continuing ed, but thank God I'm such a continuing ed guru that I had plenty of credits anyway. But it's a political organization. And again, I can't say that the American Dietetic Association is a bad organization. They're not. But all of our medical or health organizations cannot be looked at as a god because they oftentimes are getting payoffs, and it depends on who's funding the study. Like, is it the Dairy Council that's funding the study, or is it Monsanto who's trying to hush the GMO issue? And so it's definitely a challenge. And if there's something that I have a question about, I use the natural medicine database to kind of look at things in terms of natural substances. I'll also go and I'll look at some PubMed studies or the British Medical Journal. Actually, a lot of times the European journals are doing things that are further ahead than we are here. But I try to go to a reputable site, in order to back up whatever might be going on.
Thank you so much for that, Julie, just to help us and to educate us to see it through a different lens and to be a little bit, I guess, more picky about how we take in information, because there's just way too much out there. And for a lay person, it's like, well, how do I know what's truth and not truth? How do I figure this? How do I navigate this? And at least for me, what I've experienced personally, working in healthcare for over 20 years, is that our conventional doctors know very little about nutrition.
Right.
Very little about nutrition. And so I'm like, okay, there, no help. But thank goodness that we have people like you out there that are very well versed in the subject. And again, that you just pull from so many different, schools of thoughts and research and backgrounds, and are able to take this holistic approach towards nutrition and be able to, offer us a very personalized approach to how we eat and how we live and how we take care of ourselves. So thank you, because you've been amazing, and I'm a testament, because I know that I've worked with you over the years.
And it's been a blessing. Yes, likewise.
Thank you. So I want to segue into what I call my deep 5. And these are questions about you, just about your journey, about who Julie is, and sort of kind of, what got you to where you are, and what you've learned, pulls out some of the wisdom that we can learn from you. So the first one is, what is a life lesson that you have had to learn the hard way?
You need to really trust your gut and not be sort of taken in. Yeah, trust your gut. Trust your inner voice. That's not something that I grew up with. I always looked outside for things as opposed to inside.
Yes. I think you're not alone in that. All of us can so relate to that. Thank you. What is the hardest thing you ever had to do in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Hardest thing I ever had to do and overcome it. Wow, that's a tough one. I think it would probably go back to my first husband, who I loved. He was my first love of my life, who had pretty serious mental health and substance abuse issues. And as much as I felt this, like, we're in this together, this is we, not you. There was not a willingness on his part to participate in a therapeutic process for both of us. And so I had to leave that relationship. And I remember saying to my therapist, you have got to make me not go back. Because I had gone back so many times out of the desire to fix it and make him well and make us well. There was my little fantasy dream that that would happen. So I think that that was probably one of the hardest ones.
Wow. That's always a good lesson. We so much as caregivers and in our partnerships want to fix things.
Yep.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
yeah, and we're not always successful. They really have to be a part of that process themselves,
Yes.
and want it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What legacy do you want people to remember you for?
That I was an inspiration and supported his or her journey. I just have this visualization of myself as being just a tiny little candle, nothing big or great, but this tiny little candle of support and inspiration.
Yeah. You've certainly been a light in my life. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. What is your favorite motivational or inspirational quote?
Let's see. I don't have a specific quote. I get downloaded to my web, to my inbox every day, the universe quotes and sayings, and I love those. The other thing that I do is I have the Doreen Virtue, angel healing cards,
Yes.
and the color healing cards. And so I oftentimes pull one of those out each day as a way of kind of reflecting. And then I'll pull out a favorite stone and reflect on the energy of that. So I don't have one quote. I kind of do something every day to kind of hone in my focus.
That's a beautiful one. Those universe ones, I got to tell you, they feel like that's for
That's
me.
for
That's
me. Oh,
that's
yeah.
for me.
I know. Yeah.
I absolutely love those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last one would be, what's one thing you would like to share with our sisterhood?
Oh, that no matter how bleak life may look, you will get to the other side of it. Yeah, Janine Roth, who is a wonderful writer back in the 70s and 80s, she wrote a lot of books on eating disorders. And
Yeah.
one of her quotes that I've used so often is, the only way around it is through it.
There's hope and inspiration right there.
Yeah, we can
So,
get through it.
so thank you. Thank you for really sharing your hope and inspiration with us, and for making us a little bit smarter about nutrition. Thank you for being here with me, and for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with our community and our sisterhood. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here with the Diving Deep with a Denise and with a Julie for today. And for all of those that want to have any questions about nutrition, want to experience Julie, please visit her website at juliefreeman.net. You can also get the podcast notes on my website at denisecordero.com. And please, if you've enjoyed this, please like, share, comment, share with people you love and you care about that you think may be struggling with their health and can use some expert advice from a holistic nutritionist who will give you personalized care. Thank you again for being here with us. Until next time, Diving Deep with Denise. Love you all, sisters. Bye-bye.